Good day, everyone. So, welcome to our subject principles and theories of language acquisition and learning. So, this is supposed to be our lesson one in this subject. So, for today's discussion, we will talk about the nature of language and learning. So, let's now first define what is language. So, language is the process of exchanging of messages and creating meaning. It is also part of our culture and it is also intertwined with human biology. So language is what makes us human. So it is how people communicate. So by learning language, it means you have mastered a complex system of words, structure, and grammar to effectively communicate with others. To most people, language comes naturally. So let's now proceed to the characteristics of language. Number one is language is a social tool. So the findings of the study showed that language is used as an important instrument to connect people in many aspects of human life, consisting of language in the world of education, language in the world of science and technology, language in economic and business context, and language in the social and political context. Next is language must be learned. So, language learning is an active process that begins at birth and continues throughout life. So, students learn language as they use it to communicate their thoughts, feelings, and experiences, establish relationships with family members and friends, and strive to make sense and order of their world. We have also here the relationship between the sounds of a language and their meaning is arbitrary and dual. So the relationship between sound and meaning is arbitrary. So there are few exceptions to the arbitrariness principles. So the main one is the onomatopoeia, words like crush or bang or woof, which are meant to imitate the sounds they represent. Next is language has rules. So every language has its own rules, and all human beings have a natural tendency to look for and use rules when processing language. So our ability to learn these rules as very young children and without instruction and our persistence in using them are attributable to the uniquely human genetic endowment. Next is language allows human to be creative. So the notion of creativity has been used by many theorists to describe that aspect of language which enables a language user to use a language in a novel way or to devise new forms of language. So this uses the creative aspect of the language use and to describe the innovative uses of language. So we have here the acquisition versus the learning. So here in acquisition, similar to a child's first language acquisition, this is formal knowledge of language. In acquisition, picking up a language, while learning is knowing about a language. Subconscious when it comes to acquisition, and when it comes to learning, it is conscious. So we are fully aware of the learning we have, while in the acquisition, this mostly in our subconscious. Implicit knowledge, while the learning is explicit knowledge. So in acquisition, this is formal teaching does not help. Here is the formal teaching helps. So language is about communication and identity. So we need language to transfer and share information and to build relationship with the other. So according to Boehm, he said that language is called the symbolization of thought. So it is a learned code or system of rules that enables us to communicate ideas and express wants and needs. So Bowen further added that language falls into two main divisions. That is the receptive language, which is the understanding what is said, written, or signed. Second is we have the expressive language. This is related to speaking, writing, or signing. Thus, language is simply defined by Richard, he said that as the systems of human communication, which consist of the structures, arrangements of sounds, or it can be also written presentation into larger units. So, for example, morphemes, we have the words, the sentences, or the utterances, and etc. So, the process of perceiving language in an individual is by the process of learning and acquisition. So, learning is a conscious process, knowing the rules, being aware of them, and being able to talk about them. So, whereas, as you can see here in acquisition, it is the process by which children unconsciously acquire their native or first language. And in language acquisition, the focus is on the communication or reception of a message as opposed to syntax and grammar, as is the case in language learning. So it is believed that the usual outcome of language acquisition is fluency, which is by no means guaranteed in a language learning. Let's proceed now to the nature of learning. Number one is learning is a process. So, learning is a process that leads to change, which occurs as a result of experience and increases the potential of improved performance and future learning. So, the change in the learner may happen at the level of knowledge, attitude, or behavior. Learning involves experience and training. So, learning is described as the process of having one's behavior modified, more or less permanently by what he does and the consequences of his action or by what he observes. So, it is a process by which an activity originates or is changed through responding to a situation. So, learning involves change. So, learning also produces changes in the organism, and the changes produced are relatively permanent. So, if one cannot use newly acquired information for his or her practical use or benefit, then it is doubtful that he or she is engaged in the learning process. Next is learning prepare the individual to adjust and adapt in the situation. So this is because understanding your learning style means you know what works best for you and can adapt your education experience accordingly. So for example, some students who prefer a reading and writing style of learning may find lectures more difficult than auditory or visual learners. All learning is purposeful and goal oriented. So, learning with a purpose makes the activities more engaging and clear for the learner. So, purposeful learning means that someone is aware of one's motivates, which are to be realized through activities. So, the learner is oriented and focused while exploring the content. Next is learning is universal and continuous, and let's proceed also to the next, which is the it is continuous process. So learning is universal process because it can happen everywhere. So learning is a process for all living creatures, and human being across all cultures learn as it is a lifelong process. In a continuous learning or in a continuous process, it is the process of learning new skills and knowledge on and ongoing basis. So this can come in many forms, from formal course taking to casual and social learning. So it involves self-initiative and taking on challenges. So we have also here the 7 principles in learning. Number one is learners at the center. So a style of teaching and learning that is also known as the student-centered learning, where the instructor focus on the individual learner and each of his or her needs instead of the curriculum as a whole, and where the teaching shifts from a focus on the teacher to that of the student. Next is the social nature of learning. So we have also called the social cultural theory of learning. So this is a school of philosophical thought that embraces that primacy of the human action, the interaction, and involvement of individuals within communities, and the mediational power of technologies. Next is emotions are integral to learning. So emotions are inherently linked to influence cognitive skills such as attention, memory, executive function, decision making, critical thinking, and problem solving and regulation, and all of which play a key role in the learning. Recognizing individual difference. So individual differences are more or less enduring psychological characteristics that distinguish one person from another and help to define each person's individuality. Among the most important kinds of individual differences are the intelligence, the personality traits, and values. Next is stretching all students. So it's stretching and challenging all learners means creating lessons where challenge is at the forefront of teaching and learning. So this takes learners out of their comfort zone, encouraging them to push towards the outer edge of what is possible for them to achieve. Assessment for learning. So this is usually an approach to teaching and learning that creates feedback which is then used to improve students' performance. So students become more involved in the learning process and from this gain confidence in what they are expected to learn and to what is standard. Next is building horizontal connection. So the horizontal connection means reaching outside of the classroom and looking outside of the box. However, horizontal connections is also founded on the idea that if knowledge is built firmly in a vertical way, it should be easily transferable to other situations. So these are the 7 principles of learning. Number one is the learners at the center, the social nature of learning, the emotions are integral part to learning, and we have also recognizing individual difference, stretching all students, and assessment for learning, and we have the building horizontal connection. So we are done discussing the definition of nature, the characteristics of nature, the principles of learning, and now we will proceed to first language versus second language acquisition. So the expected cry of a newborn baby is the first sign of human communication. So language acquisition process can be seen as running parallel throughout a child's life every day. So he learns to communicate through natural interactions with his or her environment. So the process begins in the early life of a human and requires a healthy start, so sufficient opportunities and exposure to a caregiving environment that allows the child's innate predisposition to learn to communicate to functions. So more than half of the world's population today uses more than one language while being connected to fundamental human activities. So the bilingualism symbolizes the essential humanity of building bridges between the people of different color, creed, culture, and language. So, according to Baker, he stated children are born ready to become bilingual or multilingual. So, they are like sponges as they sponges up all languages provided by their environment and chances to interact with people of different language backgrounds. So they would pick up any language without endangering their own first language development, and the bilingual activity does not retard intelligence. So to enhance children's bilingualism, a lot of stimulations to language are essential. So, in some situations, producing bilingual children is easy and natural. In others, it can be a struggle. So, a lot of factors affect the process, such as the encouragements from both of the parents at home and the community. In bilingual and multilingual community, there is a great need to master 2 or more languages for operating daily activities successfully. So therefore, this situation strongly supports the children's bilingualism. Language engineering or shaping is important in families that judge bilingualism as a challenge. So this means that it is important that children's attitude towards their languages are motivated and encouraged continuously. So a variety of pleasurable environment for a language growth is very important. So for your performance activity, answer the following questions. This is consists of 60 points. Put your answer in the comment section below by following the format. Your name, your blocker or your cluster, and then your answer. So the deadline of submission is on October 11, 8 o'clock p.m. only. So number one, what is language and its nature, and then explain. What are the principles of language and explain. And what is first and second language acquisition. So that's all for today's discussion. So I hope you learned something from our lesson one. Again, if you have any questions, clarifications, don't hesitate to message it in our official group chat. So I want to remind everybody that I don't usually reply or accommodate personal message. If you have any personal or related concerns, please message it in our official group chat. So again, thank you very much and God bless everyone and see you in our next discussion.